This video is dedicated to a very special man, a superstar, a sifu and samurai, a self-proclaimed sex symbol, Steven Seagal himself. I added this image around the 2-minute mark at least 4 times in 4 different variations, but Adobe has either blacked it out for a minute or turned the entire video Shrek green. If that were to happen on this very video, I am sorry, but I have to upload and move on to bigger and better things. So shout out to Steven Seagal and Adobe for making such a flawless product all the time. Thanks for watching. Alright, what's up everyone? Today we're going to be talking about the camera that I'm filming with, which is the Panasonic S5, my new workhorse. Now it should go without saying that I'm going to film and use the S5 literally the entire video unless I'm holding it, obviously. Then it's probably going to be my DJI action because that's what I have with me. We're going to do a little bit of street photography with it, and no, this isn't any kind of weird Zodiac killer narrative where last week I was hanging out in the middle of the forest and this week I'm at the courthouse to start out this video. It just kind of happened that way. That said, we're going to try to make our way home and shoot some street photos and some B-roll with the S5 on the way.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32.
So I got the S5 for hybrid shooting, both photo and video, business and pleasure. And so far it's a good camera for photo and video. And I say good, not great. It's exactly what I expected out of the Lumix system without sounding like Steven Seagal and I know it all. Because I've had Panasonics for a very long time. If you go back to my earliest YouTube videos, I started out with the G7 and the GX7, then went to the G85 because I wanted that in-body stabilization. Jumped to the G95 and I absolutely despise that camera. Not that it's bad, but I just didn't like the direction they went with it, especially the 4K crop. They landed on the GH5 and I loved it. So I wanted something I compare colors with, and that's where the S5 came in. And I sold my cinema cameras to get this. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. The Blackmagic 4K and the Canon XC10 were my previous cinema cameras, and I know those are much more video-esque sound cameras than the S5, internally speaking, but they're a lot more than I needed at the moment. A lot of my work, I'd say 60% would be photo, 40% video, so the S5 does the job for both exceptionally well. I don't even know if I'm in focus. I'm using the old Nikon lens. Like that skitter. Wasn't that sick? Nice. One thing that I'd like to address with this camera right now and that's the autofocus. It's not the worst in the world. Even when I'm adapting lenses, I think it's usable, especially for photo. Video, you're going to notice some pulsing, and that's to be expected. I mean, Panasonic is still holding on to their old contrast-based autofocus. And to me, it's a lot like a kid that puts orange juice in his Captain Crunch. It might be disgusting to his friends, his mom, and even him, but it's his own thing. And I think that's what Panasonic does with their contrast-based autofocus. And to backpack off of that, another good thing about the S5 is that it's a newer camera with a newer processor, which means they're not going to leave it in the dark, and you're going to see updates coming out for the camera in the coming years. That said, this camera won't be the same one per se 3 years from now. The autofocus will be better. You'll see improvements across the board. So I got the S5 more or less as an investment. This is what street shooting looks like. You just hide in the bushes and wait for someone to just catch your eye when they lock eyes, and you just take pictures of them. I'm just kidding. There's just a lot of weird people out, and I just want to take a nice break from them, if you know what I mean. So what I got the S5 for, like I said, business and pleasure, mostly work. I wanted a 24 megapixel full frame sensor for real estate photography. That said, I can't use the S5 for that. I have a very robust workflow when it comes to real estate shots. And that's exposure brackets with 2 stops over and under 3 shots. And you can't do that with the S5. I don't know why you can't do that with a lot of Panasonic cameras. Yeah, you can take 5 shots at 1-stop increments, but that doesn't help me. 24 megapixels is the sweet spot, in my opinion, for real estate work. And being that it's a full frame, this would be a great choice, but I can't do the 2 over 2 under exposure, and that really annoys me. So Panasonic, if you're watching, please, for the love of all things holy, update your camera so I can do that, or we can. Now that said, I did get out and do some, I guess you could say, professional grade work with the S5. Took it on a cruise and did a photo and video job just for the web stuff, you know, an INSTA cut and just media coverage, and the S5 worked wonders. One thing I really like about the camera is that the low light capabilities are fantastic for both photo and video. Photo, I found that it's very bendy, especially if I underexpose a little bit. I can bring up the colors in Lightroom. And for video, being that the S5 has a dual native ISO, that really comes out with some clean images. Not the king of low light like my A7S II was, or maybe not like the A7S III, but it's definitely one of the best that I've used thus far. I guess we can name some pros and cons. I'll go with the cons first, even though I kind of said some already. Number one, because everyone always says the autofocus, it's contrast based, it's not that good. We have to name it as a minimal con because it's there. It's not the best, but I don't think it's the worst. I mean, it's not on par with Sony's phase detection or Canon's dual pixel AF by any means, but I think it's usable, especially for photos. Another con would be just the L mount itself, because the lenses are expensive, but that's a catch-22 because the mount is very versatile and you can very well adapt a lot of different glass to the system, which is what I do. So it's not really a con to me. I guess we can 86 that one. I'm not going to buy into a lot of L mount glass yet because I'm not made out of money like Afroman, and I enjoy adapting lenses, even though I guess they're not the same in any regard. According to some videos, that's true for autofocus, but optics, I can beg to differ. And another thing, I'm not going to just go and buy brand new lenses every time I get a new camera. A lot of us are coming from the Canon system, so we have a lot of good glass already, so why not bring them to our new system? It'll add some flavor to our bag that we won't otherwise get with just cookie cutter setups. Another con for me would just be the bracketing. Panasonic, please, if you're listening, add 2 stops over and under in your next update, or one of the updates. For the love of God, it doesn't seem that hard or strenuous to put in the system. It seems like a pretty reasonable request, especially because almost every other camera under the sun, at least that I've used, can do it but Panasonic's. So to close out with the cons, the last one I have is a pretty concerning one, which would be the shutter. Now, I do like that it's dampened and it's very much improved, especially from the G7. But I'm still running into this issue where I get this image right here. So the first time I saw this issue was actually with my GX7 and the G7 too. And I found workarounds. I've tried them with the S5 here, but they seem to be temporary. Back when I had the G7, I only saw this issue once or twice, and then it went the rest of its lifespan before I sold it without seeing it again. It kind of concerns me with the S5 though, because the camera's still pretty young, and regardless if I got this pre-owned or not, I don't know the Carfax, but it just kind of bothers me. If it becomes predominant, I'll go and get it serviced, but for now, I'll just use it on silent mode or electronic shutter, and I don't have the issue then. That's also not to say I've never had problems with any other camera, because every single camera I've used, brand-wise, I've had shutter issues. My Nikon D600 sucked in dust, and I had to get that serviced at 8,000 shots. My D610's shutter crapped the bed. My Canon 5D Mark II's shutter failed. That also happened with my 5D3. We'll see where that lands with the S5. So those are my three major cons. The pros, again, the image quality is very, very clean on the S5 for both photo and video. I think the color science is much improved, and that's subjective. But I always remember being very disappointed with the colors on my G7 and the dynamic range. Again, I had the A7R as well at the time, so I was pairing the two cameras, and man, those colors just were flat like a balloon to me. But now, maybe it's just because this is a full frame sensor. I don't think so. I think they got their color science more refined on the S5 and their newer generation systems, but the colors look great. And again, I know I labeled it as a con that the L mount is expensive, but I think another pro would be that they went with the L mount because of the flange distance. You can adapt a lot of different lenses. To me, a point of getting into the mirrorless system is all the fun you get with their lens choices, and you can adapt almost any lens under the sun to this camera. So the choice is yours. You can either be cookie cutter, go expensive with the L mount, or you can go the fun route and adapt random lenses that have lead and mercury in them, that when you breathe in all that asbestos, you're gonna build some character, not only within your shots, but your lens yourself. That was a real Dog the Bounty Hunter quote. I just rambled on. Okay, so you can't mention the S5 without saying how small the camera is. I mean, it's not A7C small, but it is for sure a very, very tiny camera. It's smaller than the GH5. It's crazy. Is it a better camera? I mean, it's gonna be dependent on what you're gonna do, because again, say the A7C, it comes around the same price as the S5. That we're gonna have better autofocus. So I think if you're more into photography, especially fast moving subjects, that'll be your Huckleberry. But for almost everything else, I'm gonna have to go with the S5. So that's it for now. We're gonna do a more comprehensive review of this camera when I use it more. So far, so good. I'm gonna figure out the shutter issue and I'll report back. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my Instagrams. I'll see you next time.